Well, with all the Starfield craze going around, I figured today we'd do a video about minimum versus recommended specs. So as you can see, I built SLI systems here so that we could take a look. This is Starfield. Okay, so we're gonna talk about whether or not, if you're running the minimum or even the recommended spec, if it's up to snuff, par, whatever intro words you wanna put there, spoiler alert, probably not. The Air 903 Max mid-tower case from Montech features a 51% porosity ventilation rate, pre-installed HP 140mm ARGB fans, and 21 built-in RGB modes for a premium feel without the premium price. Not interested in RGB? Then the Air 903 base is just for you with its clean aesthetic and incredible component support at a price that won't have you crying. To see the full list of Air 903 specs from Montech, follow the link in the description below. So I've got my assistant here, Phil. Wait, who's running the camera?
Who is running the camera?
Moving on. So what we have here are two systems for Starfield. Now obviously one is minimum spec, one is recommended spec. So the minimum spec, it's funny, it's starting to look like an ad for AMD at this point. Minimum spec system is running a 2600. Technically they call for a 2600X. I don't have an X, so I'm running a 2600 with PBO turned on to try and give it a little bit of a bump. And it is running a 5700 XT, which is technically a little bit higher spec than the 5700 non-XT that's recommended. I don't have one of those cards. So this is just about as close as we can get. It's also running 16 gigabytes of DDR4, running at 2966 megahertz. The recommended system is also an AMD spec system running a 3600 XT, it's the XT CPU, even though 3600X is the spec. And then the GPU is a 6800 XT. Alternatively, if you were running AMD's or Intel systems, the minimum spec for Intel is so much lower than AMD, but I feel like it's disingenuous because the difference in AMD part and Intel part, they're not performance parity at all. Like the Intel stuff is way older, way slower, which is very odd. In fact, that's why the 1070 Ti is sitting right there on the table, because it was noticeably different gaming experience than the 5700 XT, and that's the minimum NVIDIA spec when it comes to the graphics card. Minimum Intel is a 6800K. So we're going all back to Intel 6th gen. The recommended spec is a 6800 XT, like I said, for AMD, or an RTX 2080. Now when you compare those two, the 2080 is significantly slower than a 6800 XT. So once again, weirdness there. And then Intel CPU, it recommends a 10600K for the Intel side. So I don't have any of those Intel parts. I do have the GPU, but we knew that the 6800 XT is faster, so that's what we went with. So I don't feel like their minimum and recommended AMD versus Intel are even like fairly compared. So anyway, this is just a funny joke we had here. When you sit here idle in your ship, it starts to do like this panoramic exterior shot of your ship, or like kind of like an orbit. But we're in the ship, in the port, and that's what it does. So anyway, it's nighttime right now, which is kind of funny. So one thing I want to point out, these are also running Windows 11. They are identical systems running the same SSDs, which by the way, SSDs do say required for that's just because of the loading times. They're on fresh installs. There's nothing else on the system. So what you're gonna see right here is like best possible scenario for the specs at which we've built these systems. But as you can see right now, sitting here exactly in the same spot, I'm at medium and we're 1080p. Both of these are 1080p. So no upscaling, because you'll see when we turn on upscaling, it's freaking gross. 48 FPS and Phil's at 61 FPS, 12 to 13 FPS improvement with a pretty significant bump in hardware tier. It's like a whole generation new on everything, right? 2600 versus 3600, 5700 versus 6800. So let's go ahead and let's go to space first real quick. Let's see what happens in space. Now what you want to pay attention to is our GPU usage. So if we look up here at the top, that's temp, that's our GPU usage, that's our frequency.
Mine's pretty low.
Because yours is not being hit as hard. That's something that we've noticed with different GPU testing, even with like an RTX 4090, is it never loads the GPU entirely. So it's starting to look like a lot of an engine limitation or just an optimization of utilizing GPU when it comes to the title. Now, as you can see for the CPUs, directly comparable, you can see my CPU tends to be at a more overall higher usage, but it's kind of hard to see because we don't have the overall CPU usage showing. They're both 6-core, 12-thread CPUs. Now, ironically, the minimum spec is only intended for 1080p low. So the fact that I'm even running it at high right now, I think is a good thing. But what we're gonna show you in this video is that the settings themselves don't give you a huge hit in performance. Again, that was what? I was at 51 to 54, so we're now 50, 49, 48. It doesn't have as much of a hit as you would have expected. Now my GPU is fully tilted right now. It's at 99%. I can't go any faster. Yours is still sitting there at 83%.
Yeah.
All right, let's land and let's go into the city.
Oh, dang it, dude, the cops.
Oh no.
You're safe, kid.
Oh no.
Run next to the shell. Oh, dang it. Jay!
Ah!
Okay.
I may or may not, in my game save, have been in the middle of attacking cops. Oh God, they followed me on my ship.
Wait, what? They're not supposed to.
Bro. Okay, so I'm at 40 FPS standing, go stand behind the cockpit. Oh, where'd you come from? Okay, so after going through all the process to get unwanted, we're back now at the Mast District in New Atlantis. Look at the FPS, it's actually pretty close together. And so I'm getting 39 FPS, you're getting 40 FPS. But it is like, oh, that's just gross. So this is the problem we're seeing with Starfield regardless of what the settings are, regardless of what your specs are, it just doesn't utilize them. I mean, Phil's GPU right now is high 30s, low 40s, sometimes hits the 50s. There's 67, 70. Look, why is it going up? And then it's dropping back down. I'm gonna do 66%, which is actually 720p. It didn't come up. My FPS did not come up at all. So I'm gonna go back to 66%, and I'm gonna go to low. Actually, I'm just gonna leave it at low 50% like it wants to do. Oh God, look at the flags. It is so disgusting.
Okay.
And look at the FPS. More importantly, look at the FPS. It's exactly the same. No matter what we change or what we do, the FPS is the same. Look, my GPU usage has gone down, like way lower than it has been. What we're dealing with here is just a poorly optimized game.
Yep.
Ultra with no FSR.
It's ultra native. Okay. Oh look, 45 FPS again. What a surprise.
Oh, you're dropped down to 39 for a second there.
It heard me.
This doesn't feel like a 2023 game. It feels like a 2015 game that's somehow been ported to 2023. There was a lot of hype around this title. And when there's lots of hype around a title, we like to at least try and test minimum specs or recommended specs or build a system for it to see how it performs. I felt like with this one, it was important to take a look at the minimum specs. I think alternatively, what we need to do to really show that this is just a bad engine is we're gonna go onto my EVGA desktop, the one that's got the not 4090 in it, and it's got a 13900K, and it's water cooled, and it's overclocked, and you're gonna see that it's still not great. Okay, so this is my 13900K RTX 4090-ish next gen EVGA GPU. Yeah, the scaling is weird. I know, because when I put it to 1080p desktop resolution, this is what the monitor gave me anyway. It's rendering 1080p. CPU is only at 42% totally utilized, but look at the FPS right now. 94 FPS. Now, obviously it's a fairly smooth experience. If I go into my settings, you can see here, I am at ultra everything with upscaling off. Let me turn VSync off as well. But if I turn upscaling on, again, same FPS. So, but the fact that you would have to have in 1080p 4090 graphics card to get anywhere near 95 FPS, that's kind of crazy. Now, if I go even higher resolution here, let's go 4K. Okay, well, it did. I guess we kind of get an idea of what 4K would look like. It's really going like down here. I don't know. It dropped the FPS. It's clearly rendering it off the screen somewhere, but there's 72 FPS in 4K. I can't even tell which way I'm like going. Do you see this? It's so awkward. Because I'm only seeing the top corner. Like really straight is like right there, right? This corner right here, this middle. Okay, well, I think we can deduce the game is very poorly optimized. I think unless you're running really high-end hardware, you're not gonna get a comfortable gaming experience. It's unfortunate, but this is what happens when some of these titles that are super hyped come out and they're not really optimized or just ready for prime time yet. I hope it'll improve. I think it will improve. The game has a lot of potential, but as you can see on minimum and required, or minimum and recommended, not much difference in performance, and none of it's hitting 60 FPS no matter what we set the settings to. In fact, I don't think even something like a 3080 would hit 60 FPS with its current landscape of the way the game is designed with this engine. So time will tell. Anyway, there you go, guys. Hope you learned something from this video. It's a bit discombobulated. I don't know if you learned anything, maybe, maybe not. If you took away anything, it's just know that your problem is not your hardware. Your problem is the game itself. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, we'll see you in the next one.